There are 1,000 ways war begins, but in Maple Hollow Estates it started with a wagging tail, a red scarf, and a dog too pure for politics. The 911 call came at 10:03 a.m., an unusually sunny Thursday morning. "Yes, this is Karen from Maple Hollow Estates," came the sharp voiceover dispatch. "There's large animal on my property. It looks dangerous and wild. I demand someone come and take it away immediately before it hurts someone." That sentence alone could have been dismissed as suburban paranoia. Another HOA member upset because Raccoon knocked over garbage bin. But it wasn't Raccoon, it was Duke, my golden retriever, 10 years old, loyal, silly, and wearing his favorite red scarf, trotting along with tennis ball in his mouth, probably having just chased squirrel across the fence line again. But that wasn't what mattered to Karen. What mattered to her was that he didn't belong, not to her HOA, not to her rules, and certainly not on what she called her property, even if the land technically was Napo's, t hers. 3 police subs showed up with lights flashing, tires grinding against the perfect concrete as if they were responding to an armed robbery. Officers leapt out in full alert. Duke, God bless him, rolled over and offered his belly like they were old friends. One officer looked around, confused. "Ma'am, you said there was dangerous animal." Karen stood on her porch in lavender cardigan, arms folded like she was personally holding up the Constitution. "Yes," she snapped. "That's it. That big dog trespassed onto my property. I want him arrested." "Dogs can't be arrested, ma'am," the officer said flatly. "And he doesn't exactly look like that. He doesn't belong here," Karen replied, nostrils flaring. "This is HOA property. Animals from that filthy ranch have no right to enter our land." That was my cue. I approached from the edge of my land, boots caked with dust, hands in my back pockets. Calm, controlled. I didn't need to raise my voice. I had Duke. "Afternoon, officers. That's my dog. His name's Duke. Must have wandered chasing squirrels again. I'll take him home." One of the officers nodded, recognizing me, but Karen wasn't finished. "I don't care whose dog it is," she hissed. "This is criminal trespass. I'm filing report, and I'm calling the whole board." And that's when it happened, that pause, that beat, that shift in the air, when someone realizes they just stepped onto stage they don't belong on. One of the officers turned to her, not with aggression, but with kind of slow, methodical clarification. "Ma'am," he said, "are you aware who this man is?" Karen rolled her eyes. "Some rancher who thinks he can do whatever he wants because he has land." The officer paused, then said, "No, ma'am, that's Senator Thomas Carter, U.S. Senate. He owns this ranch, and it's not part of your HOA." Her jaw didn't drop. It unhinged. She looked at me, blinking. I just smiled, clipped the leash onto Duke's collar, and said, "And that, ma'am, is my pet, not threat." But it wasn't over. Moments later, my phone buzzed. Notification. Maple Hollow has filed formal complaint regarding animal activity. And right then, as the smile faded from my face, I understood something crucial. This wasn't about Duke anymore. This was about power. And power, when challenged, doesn't retreat. It recalibrates. It reloads. Let me rewind a bit. Before the sirens, before the police lights bounced off the solar panels of my barn, life here had rhythm. 10 years ago, I bought this ranch when I was just Missouri State Representative, green behind the ears, still cling, naive belief that politics could be pure if you stayed close to the land. This place became my sanctuary, my tether to reality amid deceit. The ranch borders Maple Hollow Estates, a community with white fences, flower-lined sidewalks, and the kind of rules that treat mismatched lawn chairs like criminal offenses. They marketed themselves as peaceful HOA committed to neighborly values. Behind the brochure smiles, it was high school politics with retirement money. Karen Miller ruled it all. HOA president, late 50s. Bob haircut that never moved, pastel cardigans for every day of the week. She'd once fined neighbor for having sunflowers taller than regulation height. And I was the land she couldn't touch. My ranch predates the development. It's private, exempt, untouchable. At first they tried civility, letters asking me to voluntarily join the HOA, to align with community values. I ignored them. Then came accusations. Your fencing doesn't match the visual harmony of the neighborhood. My reply, my fence is older than your HOA. Then came complaints about excess dust from the ranch, noisy horses, and my personal favorite, unsanitary egg distribution. I once dropped off fresh eggs and vegetables to their Sunday market, only to be told my carrots were visually unregulated. Still, I tried. I waved when I passed by. I smiled. I kept Duke on leash near the border, but kindness to tyrants is often read as weakness, and HOA tyranny only grows when left unchecked. Karen saw Duke not as dog, but as symbol, challenge to her control. He was loved. Too loved. Once he saved boy from snake bite near the jogging trail. They called him hero. The boy's mother gave me thank you pie. Karen, she filed complaint about Unauthorized animal activity. She wanted Duke gone, wanted me out. You see, I didn't attend their HOA meetings. I didn't conform to their bylaws. And to certain kind of person, nothing is more threatening than someone they can't regulate. But things reached a boiling point after I hosted a veterans fundraiser at the ranch. Legal quiet, filled with barbecue music and Duke wagging through the crowd in an American flag bandana. Karen stood on her porch the entire evening with binoculars and clipboard. The next morning I received formal violation notice under my gate. Unauthorized gathering, disruptive noise, loose animals. I chuckled until the police showed up. Duke crossing her lawn with tennis ball in his mouth was just a spark, but the fuse had been burning for months. And that morning, as I walked Duke back to the barn, that fuse hit the powder keg, because when HOA power runs unchecked, it doesn't stop at warnings. It escalates, it lashes out, it rewrites rules mid-game. And Karen, well, she wasn't finished, not even close. Later that day, tow truck pulled up outside the ranch gate. They hooked chain to my solar-powered water pump. Karen stood nearby, clipboard in hand, lips pursed like she was watching justice unfold. You've been warned, Senator, she said. That pump violates shared property ordinances. There are no shared ordinances here, I replied. This is private land. HOA voted, she said simply. Votes don't override ownership. I shot back, but she nodded to the driver. The truck growled, gears clunked, and the pump shuddered as it began to move. Duke barked. Loud, fierce, the first time I'd seen him truly angry. He dashed forward, teeth bared. One of the workers dropped the chain. The other stumbled back. Karen shrieked. I stepped forward, hands raised. I pointed at the private property sign bolted to my gate, then pulled out my phone. Want me to call the real law this time. The driver looked at Karen. She said nothing. He unhooked the chain, got back in the truck, and reversed out. But it was too late. The message had been sent. This wasn't about community. This was personal, test of will, of territory, of who bends and who stands. And I don't bend. I've fought tougher battles than HOA drama. But this wasn't deep. See, politics. This was something rawer, smaller, meaner that evening. The sun bled low over the hills. Bella, my niece, stood by, ate with her arms crossed. She's not going to stop, she said. No, I replied. She's going to escalate, and we need to be ready. Duke sat between us, his tail still, his eyes fixed on the trail beyond the fence. What now? Bella asked. I looked toward the distant houses, every window potential snipers, nests of hope, paranoia. Now, I said, we remind them what happens when you push too far. We draw a line. And this time they don't get to cross it, because this wasn't just about one dog anymore. It was about the soul of the land. And what happens when control tries to crush the last free space left in suburbia? The silence the next morning was suspicious. Too still. No HOA notices stuffed under the gate. No Karen pacing on her porch with a clipboard. No security patrol in neon vests pretending to care about property lines. Just the wind stirring the grass and Duke lying at my feet like nothing had happened the day before. But I'd seen this kind of quiet before. Washington, back in the Navy, it's the quiet before bigger move. The kind of pause that makes you feel like the enemy just started playing chess instead of checkers. By noon, I got confirmation. Bella came running from the barn, holding a box with a no-return address, her face pale. Uncle Tom, you need to see this. We opened it on the porch. Inside were printed photos. Dozens, Duke sniffing the mail post, Duke sleeping on the porch, Duke crossing the jogging trail. One even had red circle drawn around patch of grass where he clearly relieved himself. Beneath the photos were 20 letters signed complaints from HOA residents. Some names were real, some clearly forged. One note read, the animal continues to violate community standards. Barking, defecation, threatening behavior, recommended action, removal or extermination. I froze at that last word, not removal, extermination. Belle looked at me, eyes wide. They want him gone, not just gone. They want him dead. I didn't speak. I was too busy digging into the bottom of the box, where thick envelope sat like stone. Inside was an official-looking notice, printed on whole letterhead. It read, due to repeated offenses, the HOA board has voted to escalate the matter to local animal control and health services for forced removal proceedings. You have 7 days to comply. Duke rested his head on my boot like he knew. My hands clenched not out of fear, but out of the sheer audacity of it. This wasn't about dog anymore. This was about territory. This was campaign. I took Duke's leash and motioned for Bella. We walked to the barn. I needed a moment to think, surrounded by the one thing they couldn't touch yet. My land. We're being hunted, Bella said quietly, not just him, us. And we're going to hunt back, I answered. Not with violence, with truth, with strategy. Small town politics run on favors, phone calls, and pressure points. And I had all three. by 2 p.m. I was on the phone with Charlie Ramirez, the county animal services director. Senator Carter, he greeted, surprised. You've got problem with dog? No, I replied. I've got problem with neighbor who thinks she's the sheriff. I laid it out. Every photo, every fake complaint, every whispered threat and veiled whole letter. Charlie listened, quiet but engaged. This ain't my first whole rodeo, he said finally. Don't worry, I'll flag the address. No action unless it comes through me directly. Keep your dog close, but he's safe. For now, that was good. But I needed more than defense. I needed the truth seen. Later that afternoon, I invited local news crew under the pretense of covering green ranching innovations. They showed up with cameras and curiosity. I gave them the tour. Solar water pumps, sustainable fencing, even composting program. And as we walked past the barn, Duke bounded into frame wearing his American flag bandana. Is that the infamous Duke? The cameraman asked, half joking. The very one, I smiled. Want to see him fetch? The segment aired that evening. U.S. Senator promotes sustainability and animal kindness on local ranch. Duke trotted through golden grass on primetime television. Karen probably choked on her sugar-free yogurt. But then as the credits rolled, my ranch gate buzzed again. This time black SUV, old and slow. Not press, not police, Homeland Security. Out stepped a man in a suit, dark shades, earpiece. Agent Grayson, someone I knew from federal events and security briefings. I walked down the path, my boots crunching gravel. Grayson, what brings you to my fence line? He didn't smile. Senator, we received report. An anonymous tip claimed your property is housing unauthorized surveillance equipment and animal traps. My stomach dropped. Surveillance. We have to check the perimeter. Protocol. Karen had elevated this from HOA absurdity to national threat. I nodded. Go ahead. Just watch your step. This land's full of coyotes and HOA egos. Grayson smirked but didn't laugh. They searched for an hour. Found nothing, but when they left, I found something. Another envelope, this time shoved under my barn door. Handwritten in bold strokes. Do you think you're untouchable? Our rules apply to all, even senators. I barely had time to process it before Duke barked. Sharp, furious. Bella rushed out of the house. Smoke as she screamed. We sprinted toward the barn. Small crate smoldered by the north fence. Inside, torn American flag sprayed with red paint. On it, single phrase. Get out, Bella gasped. Duke whimpered. I bent down, picked up the crate, careful not to smudge prints. This isn't harassment anymore, I muttered. This is hate crime. Who would do this? Bella whispered. I looked at the red spray across the stars. Someone who thinks intimidation still works. I dialed Grayson. We're elevating this. Fingerprints, DNA, everything. Treat this like federal threat. He didn't argue. The next morning, my ranch was surrounded by black subs. Agents in gloves combed the scene. The barn became crime scene. They marked ash patterns, measured footprints. Grayson stood next to me, his expression unreadable. Senator, we're flagging this as hate-based domestic terrorism incident. This isn't HOA drama anymore. I nodded. I told you it wasn't over. From my porch I had clear view of Karen's house. The shutters were open. I saw curtain twitch. She was watching. You think it's... Grayson asked. She's got help, I replied. She might not have burned the flag herself. But someone under her command did. We'll dig, he said. We'll go deep. Later that day, Bella rushed to me holding her tablet. Uncle Tom, you need to see this. She pulled up the HOA's internal message board. Karen had posted an official alert. It read, potential domestic threat has been traced to nearby trespassers. All homeowners should be alert. Any sight of large animals or unfamiliar vehicles must be reported. They're framing us, Bella said, voice shaking. Look at the comments. They're saying Duke chased child, that he's dangerous. I knelt beside Duke, scratching his ears. They're building narrative. False trail. First the dog, then the man, then the land. What do? We expose them. But we wait, we document, we catch them. That night I installed 3 new trail cameras, one facing the back trail, one hidden by the fence line, one tucked behind a tree near Karen's jogging path. We waited the next night. Just after midnight, I got motion alert. Bella and I crowded around the feet. There they were. Karen in black hoodie and Peter, her ever-loyal vice president. They crouched by the fence, whispering, placing something on the ground. I zoomed in. Steel cage, baited with me. They're trying to trap him, Bella said. They want to claim he's feral. Well, I stared at the screen. Let them. We waited an hour. At 3 a.m., I crept out with Duke, reached the trap, removed the bait, replaced it with USB stick loaded with the footage. And no, thanks for visiting. The sheriff and the press will love this. Sleep tight. Then I reset the trap, locked it, and hid backup camera 30 feet away. At dawn it happened. Scream echoed across the field. Bella ran from the porch. You have to see this. Karen was inside the trap. She'd stepped wrong trying to reset it. Peter tried to help but tripped, face planting in the mud. Bella was already streaming the footage to private cloud. Oops, she grinned. HOA security got a little trap. I laughed, but then my phone buzzed. No caller ID, just 3 words. This isn't over. And it wasn't, as that very night we found something in Karen's garage that changed everything. Maps, drone photos, documents labeled Operation Sunset Ridge, full-blown plan to erase my land from the map. And finally, I knew the truth. This wasn't grudge. It was a hostile takeover. And they were just getting started. The days that followed should have brought silence, some lull in the madness, some momentary pause in the aggression. But peace never came. The trap incident made its rounds, first in HOA group chats, then in private neighborhood forums, and finally onto Reddit thread called HOA Horror Stories, where the video of Karen flailing inside cage amassed over 500,000 views within 24 hours. I didn't post it. I didn't need to. The truth, once caught on camera, tends to find its own way out. But embarrassment doesn't stop bully. It fuels them. The morning after her internet infamy, Bella found new package tied to our front gate. This time it wasn't letter photos. It was dead rabbit, painted red with the word Duke smeared across its side in dripping block letters. Wrapped around the rabbit's body was barbed wire, twisted tight like crown of mockery. Bella recoiled, nearly gagging. I stood over the crate, jaw locked. Duke didn't bark. He simply lowered his head and growled low, primal, something ancient rising in his chest, like he understood the threat was real now. Physical, immediate. This wasn't warning anymore. This was promise. I contacted Sheriff Tate within the hour. He arrived before lunch, grim-faced, walking the perimeter with me, boots crunching under gravel as he looked over the twisted remains of the latest HOA message. This ain't just harassment anymore, Tom P. muttered. This is escalation. This is cruelty. I nodded, pointing toward the northern fence line. They're building momentum, the complaints, the traps, the paint, the surveillance. Now this. They're planning something big. That garage we found, it's just fraction. Tate paused, frowning. You sure it was them? I didn't hesitate. They've gone federal. Homeland Security came here on fake surveillance tip. Karen's spinning this like I'm the threat, like Duke's the threat. Tate shook his head, kicking at the gravel. I'll open formal investigation. But you know how whole law works. Gray zones, legal shields, plausible deniability. It's like fighting fog. Then I'll burn through the fog, I said, and let the whole damn town see the fire. That night I made the call I'd been putting off. An old war buddy turned investigative journalist named Rourke. We served together in the Navy back when men stood for something besides monthly dues and property violations. Tom P. answered. Didn't think I'd hear from you unless someone declared war. They did, I said. I briefed him. Everything from the trap to the crate to the garage of secrets. He was quiet for a long beat. You want me to dig? Oh, no. I want you to expose. You're the senator, he said slowly. You sure you want this storm public? I'm already in the eye of it, I said. Might as well bring the lightning. While Rourke worked behind the scenes, I prepared for the worst. More cameras. Backup power for the barn. Bella and I took turns sleeping near the front gate, shotgun within reach, Duke never far from either of us. And then it happened 2 nights after the Red Rabbit. I was feeding the horses just before dawn when I heard it. Single gunshot, sharp and unmistakable, echoing through the hills. More trail. Duke immediately sprang from the porch, barking furiously. Belle screamed his name, but it was too late. He was already gone, bounding toward the tree line. I grabbed the 12 gauge from the barn wall and sprinted after him. Stay inside, I shouted to Bella, but she didn't listen. She chased after me, breath ragged. Phone clutched tight in her hand. The trail was muddy from recent rain, the pine needles slick underfoot. I saw paw prints, big ones, and drops of blood, small at first, then thicker. Duke's tracks veered off the main path into the woods toward the ravine. We followed the trail, breathless, terrified. Another shot rang out, deeper this time. I ducked instinctively, grabbing Bella and shoving her behind. A fallen log. We waited, breath shallow, every second dragging, and just faintly. Whimper, not human, canine, hurt. I stood and ran toward the sound, ignoring every branch that scraped my face and tore my shirt. Under a cluster of trees, we found him. Duke lay on his side, his front leg grazed by bullet, bleeding but alive. A piece of wire had tangled around his back paw, digging into the flesh. His eyes lit up when he saw us, tail wagging weakly. Bella dropped to her knees and sobbed. I cradled his head, pressing against the wound, whispering, hold on, buddy, we've got you. We carried him back in makeshift sling, our arms shaking, our eyes never leaving the trail behind us. I called the emergency vet while Bella rode in the back seat with Duke's head on her lap, whispering to him the whole way. Dr. Morgan met us at the clinic. Gruff, no nonsense, but with hands as gentle as prayers. He's lucky, he said. The bullet just grazed him. Another inch, and he'd have been done. The wire damage will take time, but he'll recover. I nodded, barely breathing. He's not just dog, Doc. He's family. Then he's worth fighting for, Morgan replied. You bring him back home. I'll make sure he walks again. I spent that night pacing the kitchen while Bella stayed curled on the couch with her laptop, scouring camera feeds. At 3:12 a.m., she froze. Uncle Tom, she whispered. Look, the north camera had triggered. Figure in hoodie approached the fence. Karen alone in the dark. She dropped something and walked away quickly. I grabbed the flashlight and went out alone. At the fence, I found another trash bag inside. Shredded campaign posters with my face slashed out, a dog collar that wasn't Duke's but looked identical, and note in heavy black ink, "This is your final warning. Quit, leave, or lose everything." My hand shook, but not from fear, from fury. The next morning, I filed full report with the sheriff. Karen and Peter were brought in for questioning, but that wasn't enough. I didn't want silence. I wanted exposure. That afternoon, I went public. I posted everything. The trail cam footage, the crate, the threats, even Duke's injury. Across every platform I could access, it went viral in hours. The hashtag spread like wildfire. Hashtag just S4Juke. Hashtag HAHEL. Hashtag ProtectorBits. And then came the calls, animal rights groups, veterans, journalists, even few senators. Karen's name trended for all the wrong reasons. The HOA board panicked. Peter tried to walk back statements. Karen disappeared. And then, like fate answering back, Dave and Linda appeared at my gate. Elderly, quiet, long-time residents of Maple Hollow. We've had enough, Dave said, handing me manila envelope, meeting minutes, notes we kept, Karen's strategies, her signatures, everything. I opened it. They documented years of abuse, plans to push me off the land, vote me out by pressure, twist bylaws to force my compliance. They had the evidence, and they gave it to me because, as Linda said, your dog saved our grandson from that snake. You never asked for thanks. You just said it's what neighbors do. That night, I sat on the porch with Bella beside me and Duke asleep at our feet, bandaged but breathing. The stars were out. The return. And then, bang, shot closer this time than another. Something hit the barn siding hard. We dove for cover. Through the window, I saw a figure dart into the trees, carrying a long object, possibly rifle. My hand shook, not with fear, with resolve. They're trying to kill him, Bella whispered. They want Duke dead. I grabbed the radio. Sheriff, this is Senator Carter. Shots fired. Suspect on foot. But I already knew the line had been crossed, and the next step wasn't legal or political. It was survival and retaliation. Because I wasn't just going to defend anymore. I was going to finish it. The morning after the shots rang through the barn, I didn't sleep. I watched their horizon as the first streaks of orange bled into the sky. The ranch was silent, unnaturally so. The kind of silence that pressed into your ears, made your heartbeat sound like drum. Duke lay curled in his usual spot on the porch, his chest rising steadily under a blanket, his leg bandaged from surgery, but twitching slightly in sleep. Belle sat beside him with her knees pulled to her chest, dark circles under her eyes, a tablet balanced in her lap as she scrubbed through the night surveillance footage. The wind picked up, carrying with it the faint scent of gunpowder and scorched wood from the barn siding. We hadn't said much since the shots. There was no need. We were past outrage. Past fear, we were waiting. The first break came around 6:15 a.m. Bella's eyes widened. She tapped the screen, pointed there. Look at this. The footage from the tree cam caught figure moving behind Karen's property, ducking low, carrying something heavy. The resolution wasn't perfect, but she could make out Peter's outline, his shoulders, his walk. Recognizable even in the dim grain of pre-dawn. He was rolling what looked like wheeled case toward the back of Karen's garage. 30 minutes later, he returned empty-handed. We didn't wait for permission. We needed to know what they were hiding. Afternoon, we watched Karen's house. Her car was gone. No movement in the windows. Peter's pickup wasn't in the driveway. I walked the perimeter of the shared trail, making it look like I was checking fences. Bella followed behind, phone in hand. We reached the edge of their backyard just as the sun started to dip. Karen's garage was closed, but we could hear faint metallic clanks echoing inside, like something being shifted. I turned to Bella. You trust me? She nodded. We moved quickly through the gap in the trail fence, around the high drainage as they planned it too close to code, up the side path to the garage. The door wasn't locked, almost like they thought fear would keep us out. It didn't. The second we stepped inside, we knew maps of my land were taped across the wall. Satellite images, drone photos, diagrams showing the water lines, soil types, electrical grid overlays. They'd mapped everything. and not just physical terrain. There were behavioral notes, Duke's daily path, my feeding schedule, Bella's comings and goings. One paper said, most vulnerable points, Northgate, unlit, pasture trough, isolated, barn east wall, camera coverage. We stood in silence, letting the gravity of it sink in. They've been watching us for months, Bella whispered. I scanned the table. Legal documents, petitions. HOA violation, stamped, draft, and confidential. One full to read. Operation Sunset Ridge. Inside was typed plan to claim environmental violations on my land. Water runoff, improper disposal, fire risk due to old barn construction. It was strategy for annexation disguised as community concern. They want to take it all, I muttered. Force me to sell or seize it through environmental injunctions. This was never about Duke. He's just the first brick they're trying to pull out of the foundation. Footsteps, voice. Hope you're enjoying the tour. Karen stood at the entrance to the garage, arms crossed. Behind her, Peter blocked the exit. He was holding something, a file. His smirk made my fists clench. Everything in here is legal, he said. You'll find we followed procedure. Karen stepped inside. Calm as queen. You had your chance to join our community. You could have played by the rules. But you made yourself the enemy by existing on land illegally owned, I snapped, by refusing to surrender to petty dictatorship wrapped in faux professionalism. Peter chuckled, you're politician. No one's going to believe you. But me. I'm the HOA vice president. I represent the neighborhood. And he nodded to Karen as she owns their trust. I pulled out my phone. You sure about that? But Bella was already streaming live. Every word. Karen's face twitched, faltered. You can't. We did, Bella cut in. We've got footage, audio, the whole plan. We even have the minutes from your own board meeting signed by you. For the first time, Karen looked nervous, but then cold resolve returned. Do you think you've won? You haven't seen what's next. This land will be brought into compliance one way or another. I walked past her, opened the garage door. Not if you're under federal investigation. She stepped back. What? I turned just before stepping out. This folder is going to the Attorney General. The press already has the photos. And tomorrow I'm holding press conference on this ranch, right where you tried to trap my dog. Back at the house, we uploaded everything. Every image, every note, every threat. We packaged it all into one concise, damning report. Rourke called that night. Tom, I hope you're ready, as this thing's about to explode. Good, I replied. Let the country see what suburban tyranny looks like. The next morning, media vans lined the front gate. Reporters buzzed around like bees stirred from the hive. I stood beneath the oak tree where Duke used to play fetch, wearing my senator's pin and holding the Operation Sunset Ridge file-like weapon. Bell stood beside me. Duke lay between us, his eyes alert, tail wagging gently as if he knew his presence alone was making statement. My name is Senator Thomas Carter, I began. I am not here today to speak about policy or politics. I'm here because my home was attacked, my land was targeted, and my dog, my family, was nearly killed in campaign of harassment waged not by criminals but by neighbors, by people who used bylaws and board meetings as weapons. I held up the folder. This is planned to destroy private property under the guise of community development. This is what happens when power is left unchecked. Flashbulbs lit up. Reporters scribbled furiously. This isn't just my story, I continued. It's the story of thousands of homeowners across the country. Silenced, bullied, regulated into submission by HOA boards who have forgotten they serve people, not control them. Bella whispered, she's watching. I looked toward Maple Hollow. Karen's curtains twitched. I finished with one promise. Tomorrow I file civil lawsuit against the Maple Hollow HOA for harassment, defamation, trespassing, and attempted destruction of private property, and I introduce legislation to protect every homeowner from the abuse I've endured, because this isn't just fight for Duke or for me. This is for every American who refuses to be pushed off their own porch. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. Later that evening, Dave and Linda returned, this time with pie. We thought maybe Duke deserved this one. Linda pat his head, eyes watery. Thank you for not backing down. The quiet after they left felt different. Less like that, more like turning tide. But at 2 a.m., Isabella and I sat reviewing final documents. The lights flickered. Then darkness, total. The backup generator failed to kick on. Duke leapt to his feet, bang at the north gate. We ran out with flashlights and found it. A new crate, not burning, wrapped in wire, inside a stuffed dog covered in red paint, its mouth sewn shut. Belle looked at me, her face pale. This means they're coming next. I didn't answer. I just walked back inside and picked up the phone. Rourke, I said, the storm's not over. It's just changed form. Be ready tomorrow. We flipped the whole damn board, because I wasn't just going to survive this war. I was going to end it publicly, permanently. and not even Karen could hide from what was coming. The following morning, the air over the ranch carried a weight I could feel in my chest before I even opened my eyes. It wasn't just tension, it was inevitability. Something about the way the sky looked slightly too still, the way the birds didn't chirp, the way even the wind seemed to hesitate near the fence line. Today was the day everything would come to head. Today was the day the storm finally cracked open. I stood on the porch, sipping black coffee from metal mug while Duke lay quietly beside my boots. His leg was still bandaged, but he was alert again, scanning the field like he too understood that something invisible had crept too close for comfort. Bella walked up beside me holding her tablet, eyes narrowed. The stream's ready, she said. Local networks picked it up. We've got 3 news vans on standby. One national outlet confirmed they're airing live in syndication. You still want to go through with it? I didn't answer right away. I glanced toward the northern ridge where the crate with the stuffed, painted dog had been left the night before. Its twisted image still burned in my mind. Mouth sewn shut, red dye smeared across its fur like blood, mock execution in miniature. Yes, I finally said. We go through with everything. By noon, the ranch gates were wide open. Not in surrender, but in defiance. Reporters lined the dirt driveway, cameramen balanced tripods in the dust, and microphones waited like loaded weapons aimed at my front steps. I wore my senator's pin again, this time not out of obligation, but as warning. Behind me stood Bella, arms crossed, eyes blazing. And next to her, on a freshly mended section of the porch, Duke sat upright with his flag pattern bandana around his neck, tail twitching slowly. My name is Senator Thomas Carter. I began, my voice cutting clean through the breeze. I stand before you not as politician, but as man who has been harassed, threatened, and nearly broken by the very people who claim to represent community values. I paused, holding up the folder titled Operation Sunset Ridge. What you see in my hands is not fiction. It's real plan orchestrated by the Maple Hollow HOA to seize my land, destroy my reputation, and eliminate my dog, Duke, under the guise of property regulation. Gasps rippled through the press line. I flipped the folder open and held up photographs. Maps of my ranch taken by drones, HOA memos detailing false complaint strategies, even hand-drawn sketch of Duke with the words, document and report until removal written across it. They called animal control on 10-year-old retriever who once saved child from snakebite. They filed complaints, staged evidence, and planted traps. They fired a gun on my land. Twice they left dead animal as message. They desecrated flag, all to silence me or break me. But I'm still standing. The applause came slowly, then built like wave. I held up hand. This isn't just about me. It's about every American who's ever been bullied by power pretending to wear a badge of order. It's about every homeowner who's been fined for having the wrong mulch, who's been surveilled for how they paint their fence, who's been told that property rights only matter when they conform. I paused and looked directly into one of the live feed cameras. To every HOA president watching this, know this, your authority ends where the Constitution begins. Bella stepped forward holding printed poster of the Red Rabbit crate and the shredded campaign signs. This was left at our gate, painted, wrapped in barbed wire, had Duke's name on it. If that isn't threat, I don't know what is. Reporter shouted, Senator Carter, what are your next steps? I answered calmly. Tomorrow I will file federal civil suit against the Maple Hollow HOA for harassment, defamation, attempted property seizure, and conspiracy to commit animal cruelty, and I will introduce National Bill, the Pet Protection and Property Integrity Act, to ensure that no HOA in this country can ever weaponize its authority against private citizens or their pets again. Another reporter asked, what's the goal of this bill? I looked at Duke. To make sure no one like him is ever targeted again for simply existing. That night, the headlines wrote themselves. Senator exposes HOA conspiracy. Golden Retriever at center of legal storm. Operation Sunset Ridge unraveled in public livestream. HOA boards across the country started locking their forums. Karen's name trended nationally alongside Peter's. An anonymous HOA board member leaked internal chats to work. Messages where Karen admitted they had to force the rancher to fold or ruin his image. It was over, or so I thought. 3 days after the press conference, while Duke rested peacefully for the first time in weeks and Bell was answering emails from activists asking how they could support the new bill, the phone rang. I recognized the number. Sheriff Tate. We've made the arrests. He said simply, Karen's been taken into custody for felony harassment, criminal conspiracy, and obstruction. Peter's being charged with animal cruelty and perjury. The rest of the board. Financial fraud and illegal surveillance. And the evidence? I asked. Solid, he confirmed. Thanks to those minutes Dave and Linda gave you, we've got timeline, motive, and chain of command. That afternoon, Duke came home from the vet for good, slower, limping slightly but alive. Bella ran to him with tears in her eyes, kneeling in the grass as he trotted toward her. She buried her face in his fur, whispering, "You made it." I watched them from the porch, hands in my pockets, knowing that victory didn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it came in the form of Dog finally laying down in his favorite patch of sun. But the real ending came a week later. The Senate chamber was quieter than usual when I stood at the podium. I wore a gray suit and a soft red pin, and on the edge of my speech sat a framed photo of Duke. Behind me sat Democrats and Republicans, the usual divide suspended for one rare cause. Above us in the public gallery sat Bella, Sheriff Tate Morgan, and Duke. Calm silent, watching everything from special service dog seat we'd arranged just for him. My fellow Americans, I began, today I don't speak to you as senator. I speak as a neighbor, a veteran, and a man who was pushed to the edge by those who forgot what community is meant to be. I told them everything, the traps, the threats, the flag, the gunshots, the silence that followed each act of violence. And then the stand, the footage, the law. We don't write bills to solve hypotheticals. We write them because something broke, and it's our job to fix it. The Pet Protection and Property Integrity Act will ensure oversight, accountability, and most importantly, protection for every family whose story hasn't yet gone viral. The chamber was silent as I paused, turning toward the gallery. Duke's tail thumped once against the floor. I smiled. If there's one thing this fight has taught me, it's that justice has four legs, wagging tail, and sometimes it sleeps on your porch while you draft the law named after it. The bill passed in landslide. Bipartisan support, coast to coast, headlines called Duke Hero. Activists sent letters, ranchers offered solidarity. Children sent drawings of Duke in superhero capes. Bella launched a blog called The Ranch Watch, documenting stories like ours from around the country. And me? I returned to the dirt and the dust, the fences and the feed troughs, the coffee and the silence of a land I nearly lost. Duke healed, Bella thrived. In Maple Hall, with the HOA disbanded, the neighborhood elected a rotating community council. Real voices, real votes. Dave and Linda hosted the first meeting in their backyard with folding chairs and lemonade. No fines, no threats, just people. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, I sat on the porch again, Duke's head resting on my boot, Bella beside me, sipping iced tea. You ever think it would end like this? She asked. No, I answered. But I never thought Golden Retriever would teach Senator how to fight for something real again. She smiled. So, you running for re-election? I glanced down at Duke, who wagged his tail twice. Only if he's campaign manager. And for the first time in months, I heard it again. Peace. Not silence. Peace. The kind that settles in your bones and reminds you that sometimes even the dirtiest fights are worth it when you're fighting for home.